Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, taking out a fun and exciting video for you guys today because we're continuing on with my Gaming on Linux series. And we're still on the low-spec LattePanda 3 right now, talking about what else it can do because you guys are really curious to see what was achievable on a very low-spec single-board computer. So that's what we're taking a look at today. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But what you're seeing here is Outrun 2 running on PlayStation 2 via CachyOS emulation. And I will say it's getting very close to running it at full speed, but it isn't really keeping up. Now we're definitely going to go over a lot of different things in this video, some of which are going to be absolutely perfect, and some of which are going to be pushing the boundaries of what you can get away with on some of these single board computers. And again, this is just one example of hardware. All the specs are in the description below. If you have something that is an SBC but maybe a bit more powerful, you might get a little bit better performance out of it. But honestly, this is a lot better than we saw when we were trying to run the Xbox version of Outrun 2 on the same board. So PlayStation 2, not as intense on the emulation side of things, and for some games you might be able to get away with it. And that kind of is the thing when you hit that very low-end computer category. And I'm not saying low-end that they're not useful, just don't have a lot of processing power. You might get some games on PlayStation 2 to run 100% full frame, no issues whatsoever, but you may end up in a situation where something like Outrun 2 just hits the verge of playability. And again, you're not going to get much in the way of enhancements if you do get these things to run, because CachyOS 2 will dial up the resolution internally to whatever you want it to do. But if you're just looking to play these games at their native resolution, that is something you can probably get away with for the most part, maybe even up to 1080p in some examples, but you're not going to get to those 4K specs, you're not going to get to a lot of enhancements. But honestly, the fact that Outrun 2 on PlayStation 2 got this close in and of itself on a low power device, I was actually happily impressed, even if it isn't perfect. But let's take a look at something like Red Alert here running natively on a Linux OS, and this, so you know, this is CachyOS we are using. This is something that in the FMVs and overall gameplay seems to be near to perfect, and again, this isn't the most modern PC release or Linux release, but it is a relatively still quote-unquote modern game, and any game that has Tim Curry absolutely chewing through lines of dialogue, you can't go wrong with that. Absolutely just outstanding, some of the weirdest and most fun stuff out there. But that is the fun thing when we talk about Linux gaming and we talk about CachyOS specifically, just how much you can actually get to run and get away with and have a good experience with. And you don't have to have the exact same piece of hardware that's being used for the video captures here. You can have a PC that's 7 or 8 years old, something sitting in a desk or closet somewhere, and you can actually still game on it. And of course, when we talk about low spec, we're trying to get as much as we can to run on it. But if you want Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, PC Engine, Neo Geo, things like that, even most of 2D MAME, you're going to be 100% totally fine. When you actually get into the game, it is running relatively well. There might be a few frames dropped here and there, but it is still a playable experience, and that is on something that is relatively cheap. I'm not sure if you get away with this on a Raspberry Pi 5, maybe I'll test that in the future, but I've been trying to stay away from the Raspberry Pis for this series because honestly, there are other options out there that I just want to talk about more. But if you want to see some Pi 5 specific videos, leave me that comment down below as well, and maybe that's something that we can talk about in the future, because the reality is there's so many different single board computers or low spec PCs out there that we could be using for these tests. So it really is something. I'm sure I'm not testing the exact hardware you'd love me to, but the reality is the options out there for hardware testing are basically limitless. But what I want you to take away from this, whether you're using emulation or playing some retro PC games, there are a lot of things you can do out there with hardware that would definitely be considered antiquated at this point in time. But it's soundtrack sample one time just so you can hear Tim Curry eat up some lines, and I'll be right back with a lot more testing.
The Premier is gone.
Yes, the coward has already fled. The USSR is at death's door, comrade.
Which is why we must hurry. Sir, I beg you, please.
What is this? Some sort of escape route?
No, sir. 12 months ago, I was put in charge of a top-secret project.
Even if Tim Curry's Russian accent there is absolutely abysmal, it is fun and you know he's doing it intentionally. And Red Alert was definitely a vibe. If you can't tell on the left, it was going for a certain audience, kind of being a hokey over-the-top story in FMV, along with a fun real-time strategy game. It's definitely something on a very low-powered Linux system that you're able to run today. Let's move over to something like ScumVM, which is going to be an emulator and translation layer for basically all of the LucasArts point-and-click adventure games. And if somehow you've never played them before, trust me, they are some of the best video games ever made in their genre, and they are stuff that you can basically run on a toaster at this point in time. Some of these games would run on two hamsters on a wheel, just basically jogging in place to be a computer. Now obviously that is just a joke, but the entire takeaway here is most of these games don't really require anything whatsoever to run, and that is why I love the idea of Linux gaming and CachyOS and some of the other actual distros out there. They are going to keep hardware alive that for all intents and purposes should have been put in the recycling bin maybe a few years ago. And considering how much e-waste we have out in the world, just grab one of those old devices you have sitting around, put something like CachyOS on it, and just see what it can do. Because maybe you want a living room PC gaming setup and you don't want to go and spend money, and maybe you're not interested in playing the most recent releases, stuff like Doom, The Dark Ages, and things like that. You don't need a high horsepower PC for your living room. The other best part about all of these single board computers is they don't really put out that much heat. Dealing with the thermal management is easy, so you can actually put them in something like a TV stand with the door closed. You're not worried about some big graphics card absolutely heat baking itself to death in there, because basically on my living room setup for anything quote-unquote modern PC gaming up to a certain point in time, I just use my Steam Deck because my gaming PC is my editing rig. It is absolutely massive and basically operates as its own space heater, and that is why stuff like Linux gaming can be a fun time as well, because you can really make it low test. If you just want to sit around on your couch with a wireless mouse and keyboard playing some fun point and click adventure games, something like Monkey Island here, you can get away with that on basically anything that was made within like the last 3 presidential administrations. And it does just keep this hardware alive, it keeps it going, and it keeps you having fun. And the best part is if you have it sitting around, it's a $0 cost because all these distros are free. But a soundtrack sample 2 times so you can hear the quality in ScumVM, and I'll be right back with a lot more.
You know, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I think we've bonded.
How did you do that?
Oh, it was nothing really. Just sudden pressure applied below the sternum to expel a foreign object from the windpipe.
That's amazing. I owe you my life. From now on.
Yes?
From now on, that will be known as the Threepwood Maneuver. Nah.
That sounds exactly like it should sound. That's always a good thing. But let's move over to something like Carmageddon, the most recent one that I talked about on the channel as far as PC ports are concerned, because you can run it on Linux as well. And you're seeing here we have the OpenGL version, which is basically trying to emulate something like a Glide 3DFX chip, and it works perfectly fine as well. And that is the fun thing about these low-spec computers, these single-board computers. As far as stuff for DOS, as far as stuff for the early PC games, the hardest part of getting them to run is just going to be getting them to run. But if you actually get that going, then you're going to have all the power in the world you need to do whatever the hell it is you would like to do. And something like Carmageddon, even if the graphics are antiquated, the gameplay still 100% holds up, and so many people were excited to see something like a quote-unquote decomp of Carmageddon for PC working, because these are nostalgic games. And honestly, if you just think of nostalgia, when you think of the low end of gaming on Linux, you're going to have a lot of fun. Every single Super Nintendo game, Sega Genesis game, pretty much everything 2D in MAME, PlayStation 1 even, which maybe I'll show you in a recent video, is going to be something that you can absolutely play today. And that is definitely where these low power computers really come in handy on. Even something like a Raspberry Pi 4, which is old now and definitely completely underpowered compared to the Raspberry Pi 5, is going to be a good time for you. And hilariously, and big thanks to Andy D for helping with the captures, he got like 80% of the way of installing Linux on PlayStation 2 while using a PlayStation 2 Ubuntu emulator in Linux, which may be the most meta thing I've ever seen anyone do, and honestly, if it had actually been successful, would have been absolutely hilarious to be able to do. And that was really the fun thing. Linux even hit consoles for a while back in the PlayStation days, but something that we don't really see all that often anymore. But honestly, you can get a lot of performance out of these bottom-of-the-barrel PCs, especially if you have one sitting around. Think of something like a laptop from 8 years ago. You'll probably be totally fine so long as it has some sort of internal GPU that isn't a complete coaster. You'll be able to get something out of it, and that'll give you some fun. And honestly, this is just kind of a fun weekend project. Throw a new operating system on, see what happens. If it doesn't run anything, well then yeah, bring it to the e-waste recycler, and you're good to go, or maybe give it to a charity somebody needs. Just a basic kind of commodity laptop to do some word processing and some internet browsing on. But maybe you'll find out that that old computer you had sitting around is actually a great gaming Linux machine, and you'll have a ton more fun with that. If you have any specific Linux videos you want to see in mind, leave me a comment down below and maybe I'll make you one. But we're done. Go play some Outrun and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.